Hello and welcome everyone to the 2022 Positive Impact Leadership Summit. I'm excited to be here, and as Will was just mentioning, my area of study is in the different states of mind. I spent the majority of my life studying everything from mindfulness and meditation to hypnotherapy, and all of the work that I've done with different gurus, masters, shamans, monks around the world have given me this idea around how we can start to glimpse into a new definition of success. And that's what I want to share with you today. So like most of you, when I was 17 years old, I remember getting all of the questions being asked of me as far as, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? How are you going to afford to live away from home? What does it mean to be an adult? All these scary, scary questions. And when I was in that position, I didn't have the answer. So I took a stack of application books for different colleges and universities. I placed it on my dad's desk and I said, I don't know, you just choose for me. Now my dad had a background in construction and he thought an architect would be great to have in the family. So I went to school for architecture, I graduated, I got a job working at an architectural firm. And before you know it, I was fighting hard to make my way up this corporate ladder. But it's really interesting because you never know what's at the top. We don't know. We're not told what's at the top of this ladder. We're just told that we should try to make our way to the top, get a view maybe. I don't know what's really up there. And so I tried to find out. I fought and fought and fought, and 40-hour work weeks turned into 50, which turned into 60, which turned into 70. Eventually, over 80 hours a week I was working, sleeping on the boardroom floor, just trying to do everything I could until inevitably I started experiencing a little bit of burnout there. And I kind of felt lost. I didn't really know what I should do from that position. And I started asking myself the question, kind of like what Colin was talking about, what's my passion? What's my definition of success? What is the definition of success? So I did what any of us would do when we're faced with a deep philosophical question, and that is asking Google. I hopped on a computer and I looked up the definition of success. It turns out that it comes from the Latin word successus, which originally meant the accomplishment of an aim or goal. So this would mean if your aim or goal was to, say, spend the day in the garden or relax in bed all day, if you did that, you could end the day feeling rather accomplished and good about yourself. But as time went on, the definition of success kind of evolved. In the late 1900s, we started seeing things getting added, such as the attainment of wealth, power, position, popularity, and this really starts to kind of confuse us. Like, where does that leave the quiet introvert? And it begs a lot more questions, and that's what it did for me anyway. So after Google kind of let me down a little bit, I decided to do something rather radical. I sold all of my possessions, and I decided to go backpacking around the world. So the first place I was Hawaii. I just needed a little bit of a break. So I went to Hawaii, and these are all pictures, by the way, from my travels. And I met some surfer dudes there. And there were like shops on the beach that had their hours based on the tides so that they weren't missing like peak surfing time and everything. And they're like, dude, the definition of success is freedom, man. Like the ability to catch a wave and ride that wave, like amazing. So I was like, okay, freedom. But what does that really mean? How do you translate that into real life? Well, the freedom of choice. To recognize that no matter what in life you're doing, you always have a choice. And sometimes our choices seem limited. We have factors to take into consideration, families to provide for, all of this, bills to pay, but you do always have a choice, even if those choices have consequences. So freedom was this first idea, and I felt that because now I was on this journey, I'm traveling around the world, and I can feel that. But again, definitely not the whole picture. And then I started wanting to look inwards. I started recognizing that, okay, well, maybe the answer to success isn't out there. Maybe it's in here. I started meditating. I started a mindfulness practice. I was meditating for up to 8 hours a day. And I had some really interesting things come to me. I had flashbacks to being chosen last for the sports teams and all these different things, moments of being bullied and picked on, and ideas, again, of success just being drilled into my mind. And eventually I recognized, okay, well, there's some more to me than what everyone else thinks I am. And going inwards allowed me to start to recognize what freedom actually meant, what it meant for me to be free. What was I fighting for? What was I craving? Who was I trying to get freedom from? Who was I trying to impress with my definition of success? And then I moved through. I kept always looking inwards and adjusting and adapting. But then the next chapter that really came into my life was find what I loved to do. So as I started going through this journey, there were so many amazing things that this world had to offer. For me, I ended up finding a love for climbing mountains, rock climbing, a little bit of an adrenaline junkie with some of that kind of stuff. And I started finding a beautiful practice of this. Now, during my stint studying Buddhism, I was meditating for up to 8 hours a day at times. And I had a very deep mindfulness and meditation practice. And then when I wanted to get back into the world, I realized anything could become a meditation. So when I'm rock climbing, for instance, it's me, my breath, my body on the rock, the sun on my back. That feeling can be such an amazing practice. And that was something that I wanted to kind of bring forward. We're going to talk about that when we get to the work-life balance thing, is how can we make things that we're already doing in our lives part of a mindfulness and meditation practice so that you don't have to meditate for 8 hours a day. Although it's a lovely thing if you want to try it sometime. Some of you might be thinking that sounds like torture. So find what you love. And we're going to also look at finding a balance of how we can bring what we love into our workplace. But even if it's just a hobby for you, even if it's just a way for you to rest and restore and to metabolize some of the stress hormones that we build on a regular basis, finding what you love, going inwards to know, is it actually something that I love or is it something that I'm expected to love, is a very valuable practice. And then after I started looking inwards and I found out a lot more about myself, I started looking outwards a little bit more. I started looking at community. As I was traveling through different parts of the world, I remember one thing really stuck out with me. When I was in Northern Arnhem Land with some of the Australian Indigenous people there, I found out that the particular peoples that I was living with, they didn't have a word in their language for aunt, uncle, or cousin. And I remember one day I was talking to someone about this didgeridoo, and he's like, "Oh yeah, my dad made that didgeridoo." I was like, "Oh, that's incredible." He's like, "Yeah, and my other dad made this one over here. And my mom made this one, and my other mom made this basket." I was like, whoa, something's going on here. You need to explain a little bit more about that. And in their language and in their community, the way that they built that is that all of your cousins are your brothers and sisters. All of your aunts and uncles are your moms and your dads. And the community worked so closely together to just all watch out for each other, to have that same love and compassion that you would for your own children with such a wide variety of people that you invite into your life. And it was really amazing to start to see the way that that trickles through, because when we see each other as just being extensions of ourselves, when we start to see ourselves in other people, we recognize no matter where in the world you are, we have the same basic needs as human beings. We all want to be loved. We all want to feel accepted. We all want to be seen. Even if that seems terrifying to us at times, to truly be seen for who we are, deep down it's something we crave, and we crave even more that if people do see who we truly are, that they accept us for that as well. So when we think about all the conflicts that we get in, the conflicts inwards, those inner conflicts that we're fighting, also those conflicts that we get in outside of ourselves with other people, only a small fraction of that conflict actually has to do with what's happening right there in that moment. So much of that goes back to that looking inwards. We've all been through hard times. I may not know any of the other panelists here, but I know they probably had to go through anxiety when they went for their first job interview. They probably had to face the hurt of their first breakup and, you know, the pressure of that first day of work, all of these things. And we can remember that we all are just so similar, so much more similar than we are different, then we can start to build compassion and empathy. And that's going to help us all find a little bit more of that success. And then towards the end of my journey, I started seeing a lot more of this. At first, instead of see the beauty, I thought that the formula required us to find the beauty. And I thought about that a little bit. Well, human beings are actually quite good at finding the beauty initially. When we're kids, that first time that we actually pick a dandelion and look at it and see that brightness and that yellow, we think this is the most beautiful thing in the world. We grab those dandelions, we grab as many as we can, we're handing them to our mom, we're handing them to our aunts, our uncles, our friends, and they're so incredible to us. Everything's so incredible. The first sunset, the first sunrise, the first time you taste ice cream, all of that is so amazing. But finding the beauty isn't the same as maintaining that beauty. Something about the way that we enter into automatic pilot, our beauty in life starts to depreciate. So see the beauty. I remember when I took this picture, I was living in a little village along the Annapurna circuit in Nepal, overlooking the Himalayan mountains. And I was watching this sunrise, and the sun was just hitting the mountains so perfectly. And it was like time stood still. I'm like, this is it. This is success. Being able to see the real beauty in life. And then I looked over and I saw one of the elders of the village, and he was looking at this sunrise with the exact same admiration as I was. And he had to have been in his 60s. He had to, I don't know how many weeks that would have been in the whole equation of weeks, but he would have had many, many weeks of seeing that sunrise. And he was still looking at it with as much awe and wonder as I was. All of a sudden, I found that I was looking less at the sunrise and looking more at him and thinking, there's a definition of success right there. And that got me thinking, did I really find the definition of success? I had removed myself from a lot of the stressors. I had basically created a world where I told myself, you're not afraid of heights anymore, but all I was really doing is just staying on the ground the whole time. So I decided to come back to North America and face some of those things that led me to leave in the first place. And there was a lot of culture shock. There was a lot of issues with my mental health when I first returned, seeing greed, seeing gluttony, seeing all of these things for the first time, keeping in mind that the last place I was living was Nepal. These were the poorest people that I'd ever come across on the planet. If their crops didn't grow, there were not even any roads to these villages. So that's when I found find your edge to be very important. We talk about the comfort zone so often. In that zone, nothing really grows. And it's great. Know your comfort zone. Look inwards, find that, because that's a fantastic place for us to come back and to recuperate from maybe when we are spending a little bit too much time on the edge. But being a person that can ride the edge, man, that is where growth happens. That's where we can expand. That's where we can really get to know ourselves and to have no regrets as we are developing into more rounded, more emotionally intelligent human beings. So I came back and I started trying to figure out how am I going to incorporate all the stuff that I learned and come back into the Western world. And it was really difficult. I had all this great knowledge and I had all these amazing experiences, but I couldn't feed myself. I had no money. I didn't know what I was going to do. And I was like, okay. So in this society, maybe success does need to have something to do with how I'm going to sustain myself. And someone put me onto a concept, and this is the last point that I want to share with you. Someone put me onto the concept of ikigai. Now, ikigai is a Japanese word. I didn't know what it was at first. Someone was like, have you ever heard of this? I'm like, no, but it sounds like my kind of thing. So I looked into it a little bit. And ikigai is this beautiful balance. It's like a 4-quadrant Venn diagram. And it talks about finding what you love. Now, that was already something that was very important for me. We talked about that earlier. Finding that thing that you love. And also finding that thing that you're good at, because you may love to sing, but you might not be so great at singing. Okay, so we start to find, what am I good at? What do I love? Where's that balance in between there? And that builds passion. Colin earlier talked about passion. That can help us find that. And then there's some other big points here that I hadn't considered on my journey. What does the world need? Our community, our world around us is constantly changing and evolving. So we're going to need to regularly be visiting this equation as we go. But what does the world need? And when you find a combination between what you're good at, what you love, and what the world needs, now all of a sudden you feel like you have a purpose. You have a drive. You can work towards something and feel really good about that thing. And then there's that sweet spot that I had been neglecting there, which is, what are people willing to actually pay you for? When I first came back, I had a similar talk to this about finding your definition of success, but it was a little jaded. I had come from a corporate world that hurt me and that beat me down. So I was trying to get jobs working in corporate sectors saying, yeah, just quit your job, run away. That's the answer to life. And surprisingly, people did not want to hire me to speak at their events. And so I revisited that. I looked, okay, well, was I just running away? It's easy to meditate in a room that has scented candles and incense and beautiful music and all of this stuff happening, but the real world isn't that. The real world is noisy, it's busy, it's fast-paced. So coming back and reintegrating, I can't just blame the noise. It's about making that noise part of your practice, making it part of your meditation, making it part of your life. So finding that sweet spot now has been a game changer. And one last thing, Colin, I keep leaning on your speech. One last thing was after I found all of that, it's about jumping in. We talked about being on that edge of transition, of growth, turning the page into the next chapter. Now, all of you are here, so you know what this feels like. You all made a choice to get educated, to better yourselves through education, to explore what that means, to put in the long hours, and you all should be extremely proud of that. So you've all shown the world already that you can jump in, but there are so many people. There are so many people that'll be standing on the sidelines, say standing on the edge of a pool or a lake, and you see people swimming in that lake, and you think, oh man, that would be so great, and that'd be so refreshing. But there are so many people in this world that'll stand on the sidelines, sweating, uncomfortable, because we all know what that feels like when you take that first jump into that water. That momentary shock that rushes over you is terrifying for so many of us. Because we don't know how to handle it. It's overwhelming. So you've all shown that you know how to jump in the water. You're here today, you made it, you're graduating, you've already jumped in. I'm so excited to see how all of you now go and show the world that you know how to swim.